All right, so we're still doing the good end for Uliana. That's where we're at. I think it's wrapping up. We're in day 7, right? Her punishment was just lifted, and we're helping her pack. Yeah, we started to pack up the clothes into a big bag. I tried to pack things carefully at first, but after realizing that is pointless, I resorted to just stuffing everything in to make it all fit. That's the best way to pack. At last, there were no more clothes on the bed, and we even somehow managed to zip up the bag. So that's it. Yep. I looked at the clock. It was about 40 minutes till the departure time. It was fun. Meaning? Well, the last week was fun. Ah, yeah, I said absent-mindedly. Don't you think so? Why? It sounded sort of insincere to me. Well, I must admit that I'm not exactly walking on air, yeah. What did you like? Not like I can spit out everything at once. You see, a few moments were, how can I put it, a little unexpected. Well, you're so boring, said Uliana and turned away from me. Well, what did you expect from me? You sound like you've got absolutely nothing to remember later. Yeah, there sure are plenty to remember, I gleamed. Yep, that's what I'm saying. He looked closely at me. That made me a bit uncomfortable. What now? And me? Will you remember me? Sure I will. Everyone. And you most of all. I saluted, springing up to attention with my hand over my heart. That's better. However, do I really have something to remember about her? Yeah, we had a lot of adventures, but who is Uliana for me? Just a nosy kid from another reality? Second thoughts, do I really care that much about my situation now? From the very first moment I appeared here, everything changed tremendously. So right now, I was just curious, what's going to happen next? Sure, the unknown is not the most pleasant perspective, but I must admit that it's a breathtaking one. Whether I will return to my world or not is not up to me anymore. It means that I don't really have a choice. I have to adapt to the local living conditions. One of those conditions was sitting right in front of me, smiling broadly. You're not as silly as I first thought. Why did you think I'm silly in the first place? Said in an offended tone. Just kidding. Why not answer truthfully? You and your jokes. All right, it's time. Let's go, Liana said happily and pointed at the bag. Yeah, I shouldered her belongings. The weight almost made me bend in half. I was thankful for the fact that the bus stop was just a few hundred meters away. I shoved her stuff onto the bus and then hurried to get my own humble luggage. After some time, all the pioneers were here. Everyone here? Began Olga. You're leaving our camp today, and I'd like to tell you something in parting. It's the exact same thing. Hope you don't mind. Your new friends just come back next year. And she turned away. She was holding back tears. Seen that a couple of times before, I think. Soon enough, everyone boarded the bus. I took the last seat next to Uliana. The first row was taken by Slavia and Xenia, and then a little closer to us, Lena, Miku, Electronic, Shurik were playing cards. Banana Waffle Monkey says, another fun misremember. I've been misquoting Buddha as saying, the cause of all suffering is expectations, when the quote is, the cause of all suffering is desire. Well, interestingly, about quotes are that they are 1,000 years old and have been translated and translated and translated and have been passed down through generations without printing presses. People have written them down from memory. They have been distorted over and over and over again. So what is a quote? What is the misquote? It is so. General game of telephone, exactly. Generational game of telephone. Um, so let's compare the two statements then. The cause of all suffering is expectations. And the quote would have been, the cause of all suffering is desire. I would... Oh man, that's a difficult one. Let's take them one by one. Expectations. I mean, expectations for sure breed suffering, I suppose. But I think the thing that bothers me with both of those quotes, is the word all. Like, all suffering only has one root cause. That doesn't make any sense. I think desire has probably a greater, like, you can catch more situations by desire than you can with expectations. Like, for example, I don't expect my parents to live forever. My expectations will be met someday in the future, but it will still cause me a lot of suffering, right? My desire is for them to live forever. Well, my desire is to outlive them, right? No, they outlive me. That is like a lot of suffering comes from death, right? When people around us die, that is... Then one could say that the suffering, because all suffering comes from within, is that's a very stoic way of looking at it. And that makes sense, because I think both Hindu and Buddhist have that attitude that all emotions comes from within. And if they come from within, then it's your desire for stuff to be different than they are that is causing your suffering. I'm guessing that is the way they would look at it. I mean, it's not that different from expectations and desires. I mean, in certain context and in certain ways, one could use expectations to actually mean desire. Well, the cause of all suffering is expectations, or the cause of suffering is all suffering is desire. I mean, if we take like a Stoic Buddhist perspective, then one could say that, yeah, all suffering comes from within. If we buy that perspective, and I mean, it has value, perspective, like from a pragmatic sense of way. I wouldn't, however, say someone that, like, oh, you got raped, better desire, change your desires. So it's your fault for desiring not to being raped. I wouldn't go that far. I just wouldn't. But there is an outer world and there is an inner world. Therefore, saying all suffering comes from within, if one would agree with my interpretation of the quote, that are talking about inner things, then I would actually say it's like in psychology, like we have nature versus nurture, stuff like that, and we have the inner world and the outer world. That dichotomy between two different things, that both are needed. Like, every emotion that you have, it's generated within you, but you are having an experience from something that happens outside of you. I would say both are necessary. So, so the cause of all suffering is desire and expectations. I think both of those quotes are, in a pragmatic sense, very helpful for an individual to lessen his own suffering, I suppose, by managing expectations. Desires, I mean, you can manage expectations, right? You can control expectations by rationality. Desire, though, is pure emotion. And I don't think you have any control over what you desire. Maybe some. You have control of what situation you end up in. Therefore, you can somehow manage your desire, I suppose. Well, no, you don't. You don't manage the desire, you manage how often your desire shows up. Right? Like when I stopped eating sugary stuff, I stopped buying candy. That was the way to do it. Like, if I don't have any candy or any soda at home, if I don't have any sugar, same with tobacco, right? If I don't have anything close by that I can just grab it, then my desire maybe won't lessen, but how often it shows up lessens. Comes less. I don't know. So useful to contemplate when doing introspections and thinking about oneself and painting a world view of oneself, I suppose. If it's about others, like these, when we're talking about, like, what's the cause of my suffering? It's someone else's expectations of me or someone else's desires of me. Then we get into that perspective. I do not like it all, because then we get into the blame game. Blaming people for their expectations and desires. Since we can change our expectations and we do have some self-control over our situations and what we do, we don't have any control over others. And having expectations and desires to control others breaks from my ethical worldview. I would argue for not doing that in a moral sense. But I think it's mean playing the blame game on others in that sense. If that is a consequence, even, I don't know. Both interesting quotes, though. Interesting similarities. I feel like, I mean, you called it a misquote, and I say, sure, but they are very similar. Except for the one you have a little bit of control. Actually, like, thinking about it, like, in a pragmatic sense, I think that your quote, the expectations one, it's easier to internalize and make changes in your life. While if you're talking about the introspection thing, like introspection and desire thing, it's like, cause of all suffering is desire, and then what are you gonna do? Are you gonna try to control your desires? That is destined to fail. That won't work. It won't work, and that will only lead to more suffering if you're trying to, I mean, if your goal is to reduce suffering, which I have assumed throughout all this, if your goal is to reduce suffering, which my goal is. So I have assumed. Sorry about that, but from that point of view, then the cause of all suffering is desire, then it's like, just throw up your hands and give up. That's the consequence. So I'm guessing that the misquote is, from a pragmatic point of sense, would make, in trying to reduce suffering, would make more sense to me than the while the explanational point, and I still don't like the world viewing point. I would agree more with the desire part, but again, then I don't like the word all, because again, it's an inner and an outer thing. It takes both to create suffering. It creates stimuli, and it needs like the perspective on the stimuli. Hmm. All right, where were we? It's always fun ranting about random stuff. The first row was taken out. We've already seen that. They were playing cards. Elisa slouched in her seat alone 2 rows from us. There was no partner for her. Ouch. Turned out a bit embarrassing for your neighbor. Wait, what? Embarrassing? Here you go again, Semyon, judging people like you do. Sometimes I prefer to sit alone. It's fine. You helped me get ready and brought my stuff here. I looked at her closely. It seems this little demon has changed her attitude towards me in a radical way. Could it be that I'm a friend to her? An odd word that seemed to have lost its meaning for me ages ago. That is rough. I can't recall any of my acquaintances when I still had them who I would call friends. Maybe even back when I was at school. Now someone considers me a friend. Anyway, what does that all mean for me? I always felt more comfortable thinking about abstract stuff. Me too, man. Me too. It's way more comfortable. You can utilize that abstractions to be better at it and change your worldview and be better at the other stuff through that abstract thinking. That is my perspective of it anyway. Distant perspectives in global matters than of simple ordinary issues. Well, I mean, distant perspective and global matters are matters of import for the individual, right? I would argue that understanding that human beings are not rational and that we are emotional, and learning about those emotional things are global matters. Like, the better we get at that, the less suffering, like, the more we can do to reduce suffering. That's my belief anyway. And indeed, during all the time I've spent in this camp, I've managed to become close friends with Juliana. She awakened these long-forgotten feelings in me. Because this is what it means to be buddies or friends. I smiled and tussled. There we go. Tousled her hair gently. What's that for? She puffed her lips. Just because. Pervert. Will you marry me when I grow up? Sure. I'll hold you to that. Okie dokie. Let's go join them in cards. Why not? We gathered around the suitcase that was being used at the table. Soon, Elisa joined us as well. I was laughing out loud, cracking jokes, and just enjoying being in a state one usually calls happiness. A simple happiness, here and now. Right now, this bunch of pioneers that I've managed to befriend in this short week were a million times more important to me than finding out how I came to this world and how to get out of here. In the end, should I even bother trying to get back? It was getting dark. The game was long over and the pioneers had returned to their seats. I had no idea how long it would take to get back to the district center, but it seemed like an eternity. From beyond the boss windows, only its darkness was looking back at me, almost consuming the entire world, compressing to wait, to only the size of the Icarus cabin. Icarus, wasn't that the guy with the wings that wanted to fly towards the sun? It's fine. Anyway, the surroundings were the least of my concerns for now. I was enjoying the moment. It seemed that this reality is completely normal. And does it really matter how I got here if things turn out this great? I became another person and I met new friends. What are you thinking about? About life? And how is it going? Just awesome. Liliana laughed quietly. I don't have a place to return to, so I can choose any life path I want. Yes, we will part ways soon, and I will probably never see most of them again, but we will stay friends forever. A pleasant warmth glowed through my body. I felt like a kid again. Liliana put her head on my shoulders and quickly fell asleep. Sometimes you may feel tired, not only because of hard work or sad feelings, but also because of fun, joy, and happiness. Indeed. You may probably even want to continue, but have no energy to, with your soul demanding time to rest and your body asking for calm. I fell asleep with a smile on my face. Have you ever seen people sleeping with smiles on their faces? Or are there neutral faces when they sleep? Maybe in dreams I've seen people smile, laugh. I don't know. Most of the time it's just drooling. Day ... Where do we wake up? It felt like I hadn't slept at all. It happens all the time. You just close your eyes and fall asleep. The hour hand makes several turns. The morning comes and you wake up, but it feels like just blinked. That doesn't happen to me very often, not anymore. It happens sometimes when my sleep schedule gets disrupted. Banana Waffle Monkey says Icarus was a Daedalus nephew. No, Daedalus was. They were in the labyrinth, and Daedalus made Icarus the wings to escape, but warned him that the wings would fall apart if he got too close to the sun while he flew. So Icarus took off and then started off fine, but he got carried away and ended up flying close to the sun. The wings melted and he crashed into the sea and died. And the labyrinth, is this the Iliad, or is it some Greek mythology? Greek mythology, Banana Waffle Monkey thinks. Right. Get close to the sun. Have too much fun? Is that the moral of the story? Oh, we have a saying like that as well. Den som gapar efter mycket mister ofta hela stycket. The one who gapes for much, like gapes like trying to eat too much, usually loses everything. Like, be happy with what you got. It's interesting. Getting too close to the sun. I wonder if Nietzsche would call that slave mentality, slave morality. Don't have too big a dream. I mean, you can have a big dream. You can have a big no. I don't think that is a valid interpretation. Thinking you can have a big dream without reaching for it. You can take small steps towards that dream. Just don't get lost in that dream. Like I was talking about earlier. like getting lost in future things and ideas instead of being in the here and now. Yeah, I guess that's. People have been writing about that in literature forever. I yawned so wide that I almost broke my jaw and jumped up because of the pain. Something was wrong. Though not something. Everything was wrong. Wait, what? I was back in my apartment. But, how can that be possible? I began to panic and I started to run around in my room in the hope of calming myself down. Didn't he just say that he didn't care? Well, now he said that maybe he shouldn't care. Physical tiredness can often overcome an emotional one. My head was empty. Fear and terror took over my whole being, and some kind of song was floating in my mind. Maybe a prayer, maybe just an incoherent jumble of thoughts, designed, if not to calm me down, then at least to distract me from my panic. Banana Waffle Monkey always interpreted it as he lost sight of his initial goals, and means of achieving it. In this case, flying. But being wary of a certain goal, that's an interesting take too. Yeah, it's like he had the goal to escape, but then he went far enough into the flying around there. Lost track. Right. Yeah, that's what he did. He was enjoying the moment too much, even. That's interesting to pretty much accept opposite interpretations of it. Almost. Like, in one way you can see it like he had his goal, but he like became all ADHD about it and just flew around having a good time in the now. Lost concentration, lost track of his goals. And I mean, exact opposite, but both of them are useful, like pragmatic lessons to learn, I suppose. Don't look too far into the future, but also don't lose track of what you're doing and what your goals are. There is a great word in Swedish that really doesn't have a translation. It's lagom. It's called in Swedish. Direct translation would be something like average, something like that. But it's just right, just perfect. And yeah, that is probably the closest translation of it. That having the balance to be just on that sweet spot, lagom. Like both interpretations of that myth could be both sides of that coin, I suppose. Find the balance, find the lagom. Distract him from panicking. So he is panicking. It was about half an hour before I collapsed on the floor. Was he panicking in half an hour? About what? I don't understand. Moderately? Yeah, moderate. There we go. That's a better translation than average. Thank you, Colgate InnoTap. Moderate. But it's more closely, like that's the literal translation, I guess. But the actual translation, it's more like just perfect or just that unbalanced. It has an attitude. Moderately, it's more factual, more rational kind of a word. It doesn't have a lot of emotion connected to it. Lagom is more, not all the time, but often it has an attitude. Like just right. Just yeah, moderately. Collapsed on the floor, exhausted, and fixed my eyes on the ceiling. It seems like I had gone that I had not gone anywhere. The old chandelier looked down at me unkindly with its dusty lamps. The cracks in the plaster were in the same places, and the unstuck wallpaper hadn't slipped down even a little. Was it really a dream? But it can't be. It just can't be. I spent an entire week in that pioneer camp. I was definitely there. I remember everything perfectly, from my awakening aboard the bus right up until the departure. I was definitely there. I can remember everything. Neither dreams nor hallucinations can be that real. Well, that's an assumption, right? It can be that real. We know that from it's happened. Just because it hasn't happened to you doesn't mean that it can't happen, right? Perception is reality. Perception is reality. Is that what you said, Banana Waffle Monkey? Perception is reality. No. Perception is reality. Yeah, it could have been perception has reality, right? Damn contraction nerd. I would say no. One way of looking at reality is through perception. And thank Shakespeare for contractions. Oh? Did he invent them? I don't think so. Popularized. Made people use them more. Nowadays, I would say, like, we don't even do contractions. Like, we do stuff like this. LOL, what's that? It's not a contraction, it's even more contracted together, and we can thank cell phones for that, mobile phones for that, I suppose. But perception is reality. I mean, your perception is your reality, I guess. But again, to bring up Immanuel Kant and his noumenon and phenomenon, it's like, yeah, your perception is your reality, right? But there is also a reality outside of your perceptions. So there are different types of reality. Saying perception is reality is a bit limiting of reality and limiting of perception as well. Because hallucination, I mean, the hallucinations are real, but not in the same way this table is real. And we have like the blind spot. Have you seen the blind spot in your eyes? It's a quite easy trick. You just paint 2 dots on a piece of paper like that. Then you move the paper back and forth while looking at you close one eye and look at the opposite side, I think. I don't remember. I think it's the opposite side you look at. You just move it closer and back and forth, and suddenly the one dot just disappears. So what is real? What is perception? So perception is not necessarily reality either. So I wouldn't agree with that. I went up to look where contractions comes from, and I got a bunch of medical advice about pregnancy. Oops. I remember I learned, I studied English. There was just this trivia thing that that just stuck. It was that like adder and orange. Both of those words, years and years ago, were called norange and nadder. It's just that people saying a nadder and a norange becomes an adder and an orange. The N just switched place. Jumped over to the other place, and now it's an adder and an orange. Just random stuff. It's kind of funny. Language is funny. But I mean, that's a matter of aesthetics. Contractions, I would say, since you're thanking Shakespeare for them. And that becomes a matter of taste. I mean, it can't be helped that your taste is just bad. I'm sorry. I was definitely there. I remember everything perfectly. Oh, right, we saw that. Hallucination can't be that real, but they can be, for sure. Somehow I stood up, went to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and returned to the room. The blood was still hammering in my temples, but at least the terror of the first few minutes was gone. What was the terror about? Did I miss something? Or I had just taken a break? I concentrated on the last thing I remember. It was the departure from the cab. The night, the bus bouncing over the bumps, the dirty murky glass, beyond which almost nothing was visible, and the pioneers. I had been absolutely positive that I would never return. Again, talking about people not being rational. Or just didn't think about it. Anyway, I was prepared for our arrival at the district center in a few hours, and I was already considering options for my future actions. Or not. Damn it. I roared and pulled on my hair with all my strength. Hope people actually do that. Like, rah! Do people do that in... I've never seen it in real life. Remember I reading The Wheel of Time? By the way, if you want a tip for an audiobook, The Wheel of Time series, spot on. It's great audiobook, great books. There was this one character who pulled her hair all the time, and I was thinking, do people really do that? But she had like a what's this? A pigtail thing? Really, that she grabbed onto it, pulled it in anger. People probably do not do that much in public. Yeah. Wait a minute. Trichotillomania. That's all right. That is worth a look up here. What do we have here? You make that up? Word up? No. Oh, hair pulling disorder. Holy shit. Oh man. Alright, what is this? TTM, also known as hair pulling disorder, compulsive hair pulling, mental disorder characterized by long-term urge that results in the pulling of. This occurs. Oh, but it's not. Then it's not like in rage and anger and stuff. It's similar to what's that called? Tourette's. Like it's a tick. I'm a tick. Like I got a little bit like OCD kind of thing. No, you spelled it correctly. Like spot on. Biological catharsis. Yeah. That's not what he's doing though. But this, I can see that happening for sure. But in anger or rage, that I've never seen. Like I do this like all the time on my beard. I had long beard, then I shaved my beard, and then I was just walking around doing this in the air for weeks, if not months, just grabbing the air where my beard used to be. I missed my beard then. Feels good. Feels good. Having something to fiddle with. fidget spinners with beard and mustaches. I roared and pulled my hair with all my strength. I can't remember the last hours. Oh! Yeah, he fell asleep. He woke up. He wanted to know what the fuck happened. The last hours in that world merged into a monotonous mirage, as if a drunken Renoir was completing his painting with a roller instead of a brush. But it's not that bad. Wait a minute. Why would it be bad? On the contrary, everything is fine. I would say even perfect. Yeah, like, why was he panicking for like 45 minutes now? I've broken free from that goddamn world and returned home. I have broken free. Watch where you put your emphasis. Suddenly, like, he's like, oh, it's not up to me. It's not me who's doing it. And now suddenly, I have broken free. It was all about me. I did it all. The most important thing now is not to end up there again. It might happen. Surely it could. But it might not happen as well. Indeed, I have nothing to worry about now. Everything will be fine. Obviously, I was just seeing things. Exactly, I was seeing things. It doesn't matter that everything felt that real. Something like that just can't happen. It can't. I claim with all due confidence that it just can't. Oh, is the panic about him being schizophrenic? I mean, if I had a schizophrenic break, I would probably panic a little bit as well, like a psychotic break. I think included in a psychotic break is panic. It's one of the symptoms. Modern science claims it's impossible, not allowed. Does it though? Modern science tries to explain how the world works. It doesn't say it works like this and not like this. It says that, well, our experiment says we've tried to do this over and over, but we don't know. Like, science change after observation, right? The only thing science says is that right now we have not managed to travel in time. But I think even like in science, they were talking about like time can be stretched, and there have been talks about wormholes and stuff like that. I don't know. Like, we make hypotheses and then we try to invalidate them. And then if we manage to invalidate them, we say, well, it seems like the world works like this for now, until we find a better explanation. I like science. I laughed loudly. An inner voice tried to stop the verbal diarrhea spouting from my mouth. Oh, he's speaking loudly. The wall into the void. But it didn't succeed. It feels like my speech and thoughts are separating to exist on their own, independent from each other. My brain prompted me to calm down and try to analyze the situation, while my tongue simply tried to ease the stress by throwing new meaningless words out into the air. He's having a break. Finally, I was somehow able to pull myself together. I pulled the curtains open and looked out the window. I'm going more and more towards the... I mean, maybe not schizophrenia, but a psychotic break. Wait, no, a psychosis. Maybe brought on by drugs at the party. Maybe schizophrenia. I don't know yet. Well, no. Since in most of the ending, he has come out of it. He's come back to the real world and made something in here. And one could argue that he just got stuck in the psychosis, which is possible in the Lena ending. The Night City looked exactly the same as it did a week ago. The view brought my mind back to reality, at least to some extent. After all, if everything is now normal and nothing suspicious or supernatural is happening, then wasn't it just a dream? Essentially, there are only two options now. Only two? No, I can think of dozens. You haven't excluded like anything. I can agree that it was just a dream and calm down. Or I can trust my own feelings and accept that the camp, the bus, the pioneers were real. Here we go. Like we were talking about earlier, perception is reality, you said. Like, if you agree with that, then these are mutually exclusive, right? It has to be one or the other. That is not how reality works. Like, we have different modes of reality. These two are not mutually exclusive. Like, I mean, he can agree that it was just a dream, and like, calm down or not, whatever. We can accept it was just a dream if, like, we need to build our worldview somehow, and if with no more information, maybe his point would be that it was just a dream. And he can also trust his own feelings and accept that he did have these experiences, right? And deal with these experiences. Like, I don't know, but for him, it was certainly traumatic. Like, he panicked for 45 minutes, just panicked, talking rubbish, like not managing to deal with it. So agreeing that it was just a dream and can trust his own feelings and accept that he had those experiences and deal with them. Either way, whatever I choose, I won't get any answers. You don't know that, though. Again, like, he talks about getting answers, but he doesn't really care about it. It's funny, I was looking for these answers for a whole week. Nope, you weren't. Yeah, exactly. At least pretending to. Yeah. You were pretending to. You didn't look, and you didn't find anything. But I broke free, and no, you didn't. It just happened. From that weird world. And what now? It's actually weird that he's having this reaction in this ending. It's weird. It's weird. The enigma remains, and additional questions have surfaced. In the end, I was exhausted and fell onto the bed. In a few seconds, I was snoring blissfully. Lunch 5 minutes ago. Kind of want to finish this, though. Can't be many minutes left. Much time has passed from the moment that I came back from Sovianok, and a lot has changed in my life. The first week, I was racking my brains trying to summarize in detail everything that had happened, creating graphs and diagrams, writing. Here we go, he's actually looking for answers and stuff like that. Writing to forums, discussing paranormal phenomena, even planned a visit to a psychic. Is that okay? Why do we allow psychics? Why isn't that, like, illegal? Quote Tim mentioned, having them trick some poor woman whose child has just died, thinking that they can talk to the dead people or stuff like that. Why are they allowed to do that? Like, at best, they have a disorder, like they're schizophrenic themselves. I mean, one could argue that they see from a different perspective then, but again, that's at best. Most of them are just quacks? No. What are they? There's a word for it. Scam artists? Is that the word? Scammers. They're scammers, most of them. Do they believe their own bullshit? I mean, if they believe their own bullshit, then yeah, then there's a third thing. It's like they are not mental. Well, if they believe their own bullshit, it's mental illness. If there is schizophrenic, that they actually have visions, or they just have a normal everyday experience and they just believe their own bullshit. That's fucked up. It's fucked up. Like, I'm thinking like companies built around this. It's like we're not very good at it, but the goal of society mostly is like scammers. Scamming people is not allowed. Right? But this, for some reason, is. I don't understand. In the end, it resulted in nothing, just as one would expect. Would one expect? It's a completely unique experience. One would not expect anything, so talk for yourself. Don't assume my expectations. It's no wonder I was just a human being, but these events obviously were the affair of a supreme mind. Obviously? Not obvious to me, you know. If a caveman found himself in the early 21st century, even he would understand more than me. Would he? No. No, he wouldn't. Obviously, says Banana Waffle Monkey. I would say obviously a caveman would not understand more than him. And a facepalm. Agreed. Oh. Well, at first he would think that cell phone that transmits someone's speech dozens of kilometers away by the will of God is a miracle. Is this the first thing? But one can get used to it. That's an interesting question. That is, like, I would, like, end of life, like all those frozen solid, just for the chance, you know? What if? Just to jump in like hundreds of years into the future. Just to get the experience, you know? Fucked up shit, man. Maybe if he completed secondary and higher technical education, he would even be able to understand how mobile communications work. Perhaps, yeah. First thing I would do is read history textbooks, say if there are any. First thing I would do was just download them into my mind. Probably if that happened, they would probably have, you would not be the first one to wake up, right? So they would probably, the people who wake people up in the future, if they do, like we're assuming in this thought experiment that we do get woken up, is that they would probably have like a routine, a standard way to do it, like getting through the first shock and then informing them of what is different from your time and everything like that, going through the history textbooks and whatnot. Yeah, one thing for sure, reading textbooks, history textbooks, from where you left off to where you ended up, so interesting. Like, since it's so fun speculating about the future, it would be so much fun, just, you know, how bad was I really? And I know that for a fact. I said 5 years ago that in 5 years, we will have, well, I wasn't very specific about it, but I was sure we were going to have way more self-driving cars than we have. Like, I had this idea that we would start retrofitting it into older cars as well. Not super old cars, but, you know. Now I'm thinking, like, the way I thought about 5 years ago, I'm thinking, it'd look like that in maybe 10, 15 years. Oh man, You think Pee-wee will be alive in hundreds of years? Second thing I would do is read all the patch notes. Oh man, could you imagine? Every 3 months, or let's say 200 years, read all the patch notes? No, man. Play it like, if the game still exists, you play it like a new game, like for the first time. And then when you have learned the game and you read the wikis and the whatnot, and then you get into it like a new game. And then when you know all these things, it's only then the patch notes are interesting. Right? Don't you agree? Like, I don't even do that from Warframe. I go to Warframe, I play that for a while, and then I come back like a few months later. When I'm in it and playing it, then I read all the patch notes. But when I leave it behind, when I come back, I don't read the patch notes. I just play through it and learn all the new stuff. And then when the patches come on, then when I'm playing along, then I read the patch notes. Oh man, I'm getting sidetracked. It's time for lunch. We need to finish this up. It is a basic, exaggerated example, just as unreal as everything I experienced. Yeah, but the caveman would be way worse. It would be way weirder. I'm unlikely to ever understand how it worked, who was behind it. So would he in this situation. And I doubt that I could get used to it if it were to happen again. But one question troubled me ever since. Why? Why me? What did I or did I not do to deserve this bad or good luck? Sure, in sci-fi novels, wonders often occur to quite ordinary people, but it was just a matter of chance. But you don't know anything. I was absolutely positive that these events have occurred for some reason. Just like a random sci-fi hero who traveled 1,000 years forward into time, leaving him in the wrong time and place. But in the future, no one knew him. Everyone thought that he was just a madman. But in my situation, they were expecting me at the camp. At least the camp leader was. How should I respond to that? Maybe I was picked out at random to be studied later on. Even so, the question why not only still stands, but rather becomes even more important. After not finding any sufficient explanation, I returned to my usual existence. Oh man, this is the part that I am most frustrated with. Like, with all the same. Well, there are many things that frustrate me, but he's like all the time. Oh, what about this mystery, that mystery, this mystery, that. Like the game, the story set out like, here's a mystery, let's solve this mystery. And here we are, like 30 hours later, perhaps, I don't know, like many hours later. Like, we have had a lot of this, just going over it over and over again, but we have not gotten a single step closer to actually, like, he has not been looking for the mystery at all. He's been saying this 1,000 times over. Like, oh, what about this mystery? But he has, like, we haven't learned anything about the mystery. They had fucked up my expectations. That is where my suffering comes from in this story. They gave me a story like, here, let's have a mystery novel about a mystery. And I was like, yeah, I'm up for this. I want a mystery. So let's figure out this mystery. That was my expectation. And that led to a lot of suffering in this reading, because what did I get? I got Twilight, but for teenage boys instead of teenage girls. Which, I mean, I didn't mind Twilight, and I didn't mind this. It's just, so far, I would have enjoyed the mystery story more. That is what got me hooked, right? But I would have found the whole thing more enjoyable if the story just started with him arriving at the camp and no mystery. He was just a dude in the 80s in Russia who went to a camp, and he had all these girls pining for him. Like, that story in itself would have been like Twilight for teenage boys, right? I would have enjoyed that more than these expectations they put me up to and had me go through. Because now I have this FOMO as well, that I need to finish all the endings because I need to know, right? I need to know. I just need to know. So I got stuck. If it was just that story, I could just have picked out a few of the women and go down those paths that interested in me, and then I could just have left it alone. Wouldn't have done all the endings, which would have been a better experience for me. It has overstayed its welcome a little bit. But now I wasn't just sitting at a computer 24/7 wiping the F5 button free of dust. New interests came to my life, but what they were I couldn't tell myself. But suddenly I wanted to get a high education. Not to find a job, and not because it's necessary, just because I remembered how much fun I had had during the first year of education. And man, education is great. I love learning. It's difficult and annoying and rough, but it's also so much. Gives you so much. Chatting with course mates, days of lighthearted, youthful fun, plenty of the energy that I lacked much over the last few years. Yeah? A truly great man once said, "Any man who reads too much and uses his own brain too little falls into lazy habits of thinking." It's hard to argue with that logic. Well, no, it's not hard to argue with that logic. Read too much, uses his brain too little, is reading not using your brain. And too much of what? Too much quantum physics? Oh, you'll be a lazy thinker if you read too much quantum physics. It's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Who is that great man? I don't know. An ordinary man will not sit around because he's lazy, but because a given subject is just of no interest to him. For instance, I'm not interested in knitting. So does that mean I'm a slacker if I don't make a couple of woolen sweaters per month? Do agree with this, though. But feeling too lazy to open a book, that's something I can understand. Although I like reading. When I start thinking that I have to get through a huge novel page by page, and even if it is interesting, even if it absorbs me completely that I can't turn away, that part will only come later. For now, all I need is to get a book from a shelf and open it, but I feel too lazy. I think I misunderstood something earlier. I don't know what exactly influenced me, but about half of my time, instead of the 5 to 10% before, I was occupied with something useful. I read, wrote, studied something new, and engaged in sports, at least in exercises in the morning. For you, sometimes I thought that it was the influence of the cab. One can't rule out that possibility. For all 7 days I was participating in social activities, verbal communication, and with others in amounts that before would have caused terror and severe introversion in me. On the other hand, it's not so easy to change one's personality in a single week. Yeah, exactly. Especially for someone as stubborn as me. But it is easy to point them in a new direction, showing them a guiding line. However, I'd never believed that it would be possible with me. Anyway, I enjoyed these changes so much that I tried not to think about their causes. What the hell, nobody would worry about the why if they managed to hit a jackpot by betting their last pair of trousers. Here the author doesn't really understand humans. I mean, a lot of it makes sense, but like, I mean, you can't change your personality and the way you go about life, but there are a lot of personality traits like introversion. That is, it's genetic, right? It happens when you get born and your early years, and then it's established. Some things, like if you're an introvert, you're an introvert. Like you can, at different times in life, you end up at different points on the scale, but you're always like within an area on the bell curve, right? You move around on an area on the bell curve. You can't just go from one side to the other side. That's not how it works. Not at his age, anyway. In summer, I re-enrolled at university, and they started in autumn. Time passed. I eagerly attended lectures and seminars, and studied for tests and examinations with a level of enthusiasm that I wouldn't have expected from myself. I managed to become a part of the group with surprising ease. Although I was older than most students, it didn't trouble me. Maybe it's because of my natural immaturity or changes in my personality. I didn't know for sure. Most likely the answer is somewhere in the middle. The joy of communicating with people, lost many years ago, returned. It was easy to get along with others. Their problems didn't seem so distant and trivial to me. It's normal life, which before I had considered just a grey, depressing mass, started to shine with new colors. That's good. He's leaving his depression behind. Well, it's not depression like in the depression means two different things. We have the clinical depression, like that's the illness, you get it, but then it passes quite quickly. It's like weeks, couple of months at most. Like years and years. That kind of depression is something else. That's more like perspective on life kind of thing, which he has changed due to. It's kind of weird because I've been thinking about this. He's learned something from all the, like when he gets back to the future, like except for the Lena endings and Semyon endings, all the other endings, he has learned something and he's changed his attitude about something and becomes a better person when he comes back. Same here. Like the others, though, they kind of made sense what he learned. Here, he learned friendship. It seemed like he learned friendship, but when he gets back, he learned to enjoy studying, which is weird for me. Sometimes it seemed to me that I'd turn into a doll, become one of a billion identical tin soldiers standing in a straight rows on a shelf in a toy shop. But in this shop, apart from the glowing showcase that sparkled with fancy writing describing new season's offers and Christmas discounts, was a storage where all the defective products were thrown: a teddy bear without a paw, a firefighter's truck in need of a mechanic, a transformer who looked more like a microwave than a mighty robot, jigsaw puzzles which assembled into trippy postmodernist pictures. My place used to be among those broken toys. An adjective person once said. The author wrote this. An person once said. Like, what's an adjective that starts with the vocal? Vowel, it's called vowel. Delayed response was in the response to quote. Yeah, he said something. A great person once said. A great man, even he said once said that. What's wrong with that, by the way? Yeah, it's like the person was great. Or what are you getting at? Oh, who is the great person? I mean, I wouldn't call a person great. I mean, again, it's like I often say, it's great is a subjective value judgment, right? So sometimes I just suspend my annoyance with that type of language. That I can that I feel like a great person. I feel this space. I have great feelings towards this person, something like that. And that person once said, "Oh, and there we go. I totally disagree with that. Words should stand by themselves. Who said them? Like in ethics and morality, the person has no authority. The words are more important. Like, if the words convince you, then who said them should not matter." Right? If we're talking about ethics and morality and stuff like that, I guess. Well, I've probably done that mistake. I often call Douglas Adams a genius when I quote him. But it's not relevant who said it, it's just what's been said, I suppose. And while some of them could take refuge in charity drives or an orphanage, my only fate was being dumped and then recycled again. So I couldn't help enjoying such changes in my life. Oh, another picture. It was the last session of the hardest subject this term. Most students didn't like it because of its difficulty and the hard-to-understand teacher, I suppose, but I found a kind of pleasure in dealing with tables, graphs, and diagrams. Counting the figures by pieces, I arranged them in columns and lines in the right order, summing up, subtracting, dividing, and multiplying, and using them to get a precise picture of any event. No number could avoid my attentive gaze. All of them would be captured, calculated, analyzed. Each of them would get an index number and a place in the proper cell. After its arrival, every digit will be assigned a bunk, a work uniform, and off-duty clothes will be sent to its designated task. Some will be digging a trench from 9 to 5. Some will march off to face the trends. Some will be trying to hit a linear regression on the shooting range. Groupmate, what are you thinking about? Reluctantly, I stopped writing and gazed at my classmate, taking notes on the lecture, as you can see. Oh, just screw it. Just read the workbook afterwards. I read the workbook as well. I'm always astonished by you. What's so astonishing? You're planning to gain a first-class diploma, aren't you? Never thought about it. Don't tell me if you really find it interesting. What a douchebag! Don't tell me you find this interesting. What an asshole! Don't yuck someone else's yum. Don't be that guy. I remembered that just a moment ago I'd imagined myself emblazoned on a banner borne aloft by a regiment of digits and couldn't help smiling. You won't even need all this stuff. Everything will be needed, at least for general development. Agreed. Classmate grinned sarcastically. I bet you never read even a single book in your whole life. So what? He asked challengingly. Just stating a fact. Semyon was being an asshole right back. And you're always somewhere up in the clouds. He was right about that, although I regained part of my lost social skills. I often slipped out of touch with reality, dreaming of something else, yeah. You say it like it's a bad thing. And there's nothing wrong with not reading books either. Indeed, he has a point there. There's nothing wrong, don't yuck his yum. Human beings can't have only material needs. I said philosophically, mocking him. Oh, you're such a downer, yawn. The lecture was approaching its end, and I began to plan out the rest of the day. I mean, in uni, like, it's the last lecture of the last difficult course, right? He should know that person is a dick, right? Why is he sitting next to him? Like I would have weeded that guy out from my personal space like ages ago. I would never sit next to him or talk to him, engage. If that's the only thing I would get, like someone yucking my yum, what's the point? Like, you do you, I'll do me. You have your things, and that's fine. You don't like reading books, that's fine. We're different. The lecture was approaching its end, and I began to plan out the rest of the day. Need to buy some groceries and later finish a project and send it to the client. Then I got to write down notes. And then in the evening I can just read or watch something. Anime! Unless someone phones or writes me, there's no urgent matters that I can spare some time for my mates. Well, 5 whole minutes to go. I looked at my phone and realized that it is exactly a year after I returned from the Sovionic pioneer camp. Banana Waffle Monkey says, invalidating someone else's discipline or interests. Yeah, that is a sign of weak mental fortitude, I think. I had one of those classmate interactions in one of my education classes, of all things, this week. Yeah, that's like, I mean, teenagers are like that, right? I mean, young teenagers, kids, are narcissistic. Banana Waffle Monkey says, he got called out pretty fucking quickly. Yeah, I imagine, like, most people grow out of that teenage narcissistic view of the world, like trying to step on other people. It's rare, I think. We had it like earlier this week. It's so rare that you like remember it. It happens, like, and a lot of people noticed it and called it out, like, this is fucked up. Don't yuck someone else's yum. That's fucked up. I mean, sometimes you do by mistake. I've done that, like when you hear about something strange, like hidden bigotry, like I heard someone read the story, like coming from 4chan, probably about somebody who enjoy eating poop, and I'm like, oh, that's gross. But that's like my reaction, that I would feel gross. I wouldn't, it's, you might like get an instant reaction like that, but I would apologize and just, yeah, it's not for me, right? It's not for me. The idea makes me feel all queasy and gross. Like if I put my head in those shoes, each their own, exactly. Each their own. As long as you're not causing suffering to others, then yeah, to each their own. My soul felt warmer from such thoughts, and I smiled blissfully. Does the soul have feelings? Temperature? It's a metaphor. Let it go. It's not often anymore that I recall those events. Obviously, one can't just forget something like that, indeed. Those moments of something bizarre and extraordinary that are engraved in my memory forever. Yeah. Normally, even the happiest moments fade and just reminiscences of them remain, nothing more. But the week spent in Sovinornok was different. I remembered everything in perfect detail. The terror of the first few minutes after waking up in the bus. Yeah, that is how memory works. The more extreme something is, good or bad, the stronger the memory. Like unique. It sticks out. First day, hard, full of surprises and amazing acquaintances. Cheerful and carefree pranks with Juliana. Just take that trick with the ghosts, for instance. Obviously, says Banana One. Obviously. There are not many obvious things in this world. Can you name something that is obvious? The best Soviet comedians would envy it, and the pioneers had such expressions. They were dying laughing. It sure would be nice to meet Uliana in real life. Well, she's not always perfect. She's hyperactive and she doesn't have any idea about good manners. But one does not meet such a sincere, carelessly cheerful and energetic person very often. Maybe she gave energy to me. Well, obvious is a relative term, isn't it? Like for us, if we see 1 plus 1, we obviously think of 2. And that is quite obvious that we would think that way, I think. Well, in context. But obvious is always in context. Without giving context, or that's actually when someone says obviously, should make a better job of doing a charitable interpretation then of the context. When he says obviously, maybe something is obvious. I don't know. Maybe she gave some of that energy to me. The bell rang, my classmate stood up, said his goodbyes and left. Oh man, I'm so late for lunch. I started packing my exercise books and textbooks into my backpack when I suddenly heard someone's voice in front of me. Excuse me, is this the 34th lecture hall? There's a sign on the door. No, there's not. The girl's voice sounded offended. Someone must have removed it. So is this the 34th? Yeah. At last I closed my backpack and raised my head, intending to stand up. The girl looked terribly familiar. Haven't we? Yes, I thought the same. She looked very surprised. But I don't remember where I could have met you. Neither do I. What year are you in? First year. Oh, still pretty much green. The girl smiled. Everything is still ahead of me. As if I'm already past everything. And what about you? Fourth. So, is it difficult to study? For the first year it is. I knew it, she said in an upset manner. But it gets easier with time. It's always easier when you get used to it. Sometimes I'm too lazy to do things. Yeah, that also happens. Do you still have any stuff from the first year? If you share it, it'll be easier for me to prepare for my examinations. Obviously, I have nothing. My first year was finished a long time ago. But suddenly I felt a strong desire to ask for her phone numbers. I lied. Yeah, maybe, but I'll have to check. That's great. We exchanged phone numbers. Smooth. My name is Semyon. Obviously? Was it obviously again? Wait. What are you saying, Banana Wolf? Okay. Ah, there we go. Obviously, I had nothing. My first year was finished a long time ago. Yeah, in this context, it's fine, isn't it? Or are you just noticing? What should I call you? Uliana. And then I realized who this girl reminded me of. Exactly, she's Uliana, just 5 years older. For a moment, I was at a loss for word. What, that's an ordinary name. That was Lenin's name, she said, pouting. No, just, have you ever been to a pioneer camp? When I was a kid. Why are you asking? In the blink of an eye, all the events that happened in Sobionics flashed before my eyes. So it wasn't a dream. Banana Waffle Monkey says, probably. I just think it's interesting when words show up a lot like that. Yeah, I had that problem. I said basically, like all the time. And I have been saying for sure, like get mental hiccups, like patterns of repetition. Although they were just summer camps, not pioneer ones, Uliana added. So you weren't wearing a uniform? The one with the red neckerchief? Of course not. Fashion police alert, she laughed loudly. But why are you asking? I was about to tell her everything, but then I realized she would just consider me a psycho. After all, this girl was much older than the Uliana I remembered. Maybe she just looked like her. I had a dream, and I think I saw you there. Kind of a déjà vu. A déjà what? Wait. Has she started university and never known a déjà vu? Doesn't everybody have that experience from time to time? And if you have the experience, then you get to learn the word for it, no? It's when one sees something for the first time but believes that he has seen it before. Well, now that you mention it, her face became serious. I think I've seen you somewhere else as well. Definitely. Maybe it's just that thing you said. An interesting coincidence, don't you think? I don't know. Anyway, I'll give you a call. See ya. She laughed and ran out of the room. Appearance, behavior, way of talking. She's definitely an exact copy of Juliana. So what does that mean? Is my dream coming true? I can't help but enjoy it. And above all, I'll see this forever cheerful girl again, for sure. Man, it's gotta be way longer now. Oh, here we go. Attack on Pedo Bear. Every story has its beginning and its end. Every story has its outline, synopsis, key points, prologue, and epilogue. Boop. And we're done. This was this. Oh, fuck you, game. I don't want to see that again. I had enough the first time. So, this was my second worst ending. I think Slavia ending I really didn't like, and this both these endings were bad. I think I did not like those endings. So now it's only these two left, right? Miku and Yulia? Yeah. 2 more endings to go. Oh man, spoilers. Saw that coming, right? Harem end. Oh. Well, thanks for hanging out today. It was a lot of fun discussions today, for sure. And we went through that ending, so only 2 more left to go. We managed to get a lot of Path of Exile in as well. Starting to unlock stuff.